ध्वनिर्वर्णा पदं वाक्यमित्यास्पद चतुष्टयम् यस्याः सूक्ष्मादि भेदे वाग्देवीं तामुपास्महे।
The Electronic Media Production and Research Center EMPRC of Madhya Pradesh Bhoj Open University presents an audio program of English literature. This audio program will be useful to the student of BA first year. This audio program is based on the second unit of first paper titled Literature in English from 1550 to 1750 AD. The title of program is John Milton, How Soon Hath Time? To deliver the lecture on this topic, we have invited our subject expert, Dr. Shubra Thripathi. Sound edited and presented by Amar Bahadur Yadav. Let's listen to the audio program, John Milton, How Soon Hath Time?
In this section, we will talk about the sonnet that is prescribed for you. How soon hath time? This is also meant for students of BA first year studying English literature. It is from the first paper entitled Literature in English 1550 to 1750, and it is from the second unit of poetry. The objectives of this session are that at the end of this session, you will be able to explain the sonnet prescribed for you, identify its theme, analyze its structure, explain the poetic devices used in the sonnet. In short, you will be able to explain, analyze, and critically estimate the sonnet. So let us talk about the background of this sonnet. As I told in the first part, like other sonnets of Milton, this is also a very, very autobiographical sonnet. This was written by the time Milton graduated from Cambridge at the age of 23. During this time, he faced many moral and intellectual dilemmas. What kind of dilemmas? As we had talked earlier, that Milton was a classicist by training and he was a Puritan by sympathy. So, obviously, there was to be a moral and intellectual dilemma. At this time, Milton found himself unsuitable for the church as a profession. This was a profession which was usually considered very prestigious for an educated young man. At this time, he found that his intellectual capacities were unsuitable. Now, in what sense were they unsuitable? He had been a great scholar at Cambridge, and therefore he wanted to write poetry, he wanted to consciously be a poet, and he felt that he was incapable of writing poetry. Whatever he had written so far, he was not satisfied with it. He wanted to be like the classical poets that he had read. So his intellectual capacities, he felt that they were not suitable to what he wanted to do. At this time, he also refused to study law, which was again considered to be a very prestigious profession. So he did not want to join the church because he was a Puritan by sympathies, and he did not want to join the church which he was opposing, and at the same time, he did not want to study law. He wanted to be a poet consciously, and he found himself unsuitable for it. At this time, he also had a sense of duty towards God. He had great faith in God, and this faith was not shaken at any time, whatever the circumstances were. He also felt a sense of purpose in life. He wanted to do something in life, and he felt that so far he had not been able to do much. He said once that he felt he was on the threshold of maturity with, I quote him, a mind made and set wholly on the accomplishment of great things. So you can imagine that at the age of 23, he had already set his mind to accomplish something great. Obviously, he felt frustrated that he had not been able to make a mark so far. Let us see what is the theme of this sonnet that we are going to study. This was composed in 1631 at the age of 23, which he mentions in the first line of the sonnet also. He felt that 23 years have passed without any significant achievement. So see, his sonnet is very closely associated with the frame of mind which he was in at that time. This is what he is stating in his sonnet. He says that he has written many poems which have shown promise also, but they lack inward ripeness. Now what would this mean? This is from the sonnet. This expression which is being quoted is from the sonnet. He feels that his poems were not mature enough. They are not good enough. So they lack inward ripeness. So the poet, when he has these thoughts, he is sad at first. He feels that what he wanted to do, he has not been able to do, and this makes him very unhappy. But very soon, his faith in God redeems him from the despair he finds himself in. He feels that the poetic merits which he had were in strict proportion to his duties assigned by God. He felt that whatever talent God had given him, he had given him in accordance to the duties which God wanted him to do. That means the kind of poems he wanted him to write. So accordingly, his talent had been given to him. Let us now see how this theme has been incorporated in the text of the sonnet. So let us go into the text now. The first line is, "How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my 23rd year." So he's talking about his 23 years of life, the 23rd year of his life. The third line is, "My hasting days fly on with full career, but my late spring no bud nor blossom sheweth." This is the first 4 lines, that is the first quatrain of the sonnet. The second quatrain begins, "Perhaps my semblance might deceive the truth, that to manhood I'm arrived so near, and inward ripeness doth much less appear, that some more timely happy spirits endueth." So you have truth rhyming with doth, you have near rhyming with appear. Now in this, if you recall, we will talk about this rhyme scheme later on, but think about this rhyme scheme which Milton has used and compare it with the rhyme scheme that Shakespeare or Petrarch or other sonneteers had used earlier. Then we have, this is line number 9, it goes, "Yet be it less or more, or soon or slow, it shall be in strictest measure even, to that same lot, however mean or high." This is a set of 3 lines, "Towards which time leads me, and the will of heaven, all is if I have grace to use it so, as ever in my great taskmaster's eye." Another set of 3 lines. So now let us go back to these lines and think about what they mean. He begins when he says, "How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth." Time is seen as a thief. He says time is a thief, and what does he steal? He steals away youth. How does he steal? He steals it away very subtly, very quietly. You don't come to know that your youth has been stolen away by time. And Milton says, "How soon time has stolen away my youth." And he says, "Stolen on his wing my 23rd year." So time is seen as a creature with wings, and it has stolen away the youth of the poet by the time he is 23 years old. He says, "My hasting days fly on with full career, What kind of days? Hasting days. Days which are passing away very hastily. They are flying away like birds with full career on full speed. But my late spring no bud nor blossom sheweth. Late spring would mean spring is youth and late youth. That means his youth is going away very fast, and they have borne no bud, no blossom. That means if you compare youth with spring, then youth has not produced any poem in the form of bud or blossom. So the first image here is that of time, which is thief and a winged creature. That image of wings, of flying, of birds flying, is continued here with fly. When days are called, days are expressed as flying away, and then the image of from nature, of trees, of plants bearing buds and flowers is taken up, and youth is compared to spring, which has not shown any bud or blossom. That is, the poet has not produced any poems so far. So this is the first quatrain, the first 4 lines. And see the rhyme scheme over here. You have youth rhyming with shut, and you have year rhyming with career. So if you take this as A, this is B, then B, and then A. So just compare this with the other rhyme scheme which Shakespeare uses, which is A, B, A, B. This is a different kind of pattern, A, B, B, A. In this sense, Milton deviates from the tradition of other sonnetiers. He experiments with rhyme. Let us move on to the second quatrain. He says, perhaps my semblance might deceive the truth. Semblance, appearance. Perhaps my appearance will not reveal the truth. It will deceive the truth. It will not show the true picture. That I to manhood am arrived so near. Maybe I look much younger than I am. I'm already a man. I'm advancing far in age, but I seem to be very youthful, very boyish. So maybe my appearance will not show that I have matured so much. And inward ripeness doth much less appear. Outwardly I have ripened. Outwardly I have matured. I have become a man. But inwardly I am mentally, intellectually not so ripe, not so mature. That some more timely happy spirits endueth. Some more people, some other people who are happy enough, who are fortunate enough to be as mature as they are physically. I am not so happy, I am not so fortunate as compared to those people. Outwardly, I am a man, I seem to be very ripe, very mature, but inwardly, I am quite immature. After those 8 lines, 2 quatrains, there is a turn in the thought with this word yet. And he says, yet be it less or more, or soon or slow. Let this ripeness be less or more, or maybe it comes very early to me, it comes very soon, or it comes very late, it comes very slow. The intellectual maturity comes to me either early or late. It shall be still in strictest measure even. This maturity that will eventually come to me will be strictly measured according to the will of God. It will be strictly according to that same lot, however mean or high. Just see the punctuation mark. It is not a full stop. The sentence does not end here. This is a tercet. We had first 8 line, which was the octave. Now we have the sestet, the set of 6 lines. And here you have the first 3 lines. So the sense of the tercet runs into the other tercet, that is, the sestet is not bifurcated into sestets. It is a complete unit of 6 lines. So he says that this maturity that will come to me will be according to the purpose that I am to serve, whether it is a mean purpose, a low purpose, or a high purpose. Accordingly, I will get this maturity. It may come to me soon, it may come to me slow. And this towards which time leads me and the will of heaven. This will be according to where time or destiny takes me, and it will also be accordingly giving to me according to the will of God. Will of heaven here would mean the will of God. The simple meaning is that I am not mature enough as of now, and this maturity will eventually come to me either early or late, and this will be according to the will of God, according to what God expects from me. All is if I have grace to use it so, and moreover, all this will be according to if I am able to use the talent properly, the maturity that is given to me according to God's will. If I am able to use it gracefully, then it will come to me in that measure. As ever in my great taskmaster's eye. Taskmaster is God. Just as a teacher wants you to do something, in the same way God is his taskmaster. God has set a task for him and he is keeping an eye on him. So this maturity will eventually come to him according to his destiny, that is where time will lead him, according to God's will, and if he has the talent to use it accordingly, according to God's design, then it will come to him either early or late, but it will surely come to him. So the word yet with which the 9th line began is a turning point in the poem. In the first 2 quatrains, Milton is talking about how he is sad and depressed at not having been able to produce any good poem. But later on, as the sestet begins, there is a turning point and he regains his cheerful self, and he says his faith in God is unshaken. He is sure that eventually talent will come to him surely. We talked about the structure in the rhyme in passing. Let us recapitulate that. This sonnet is a Petrarchan in form, unlike other English poets. What does this mean? We said that there was a unit of 8 lines which was divided into 2 quatrains. This is the Petrarchan form. What did the English poets do? They divided their sonnet into 3 quatrains and a couplet, and this is the form which Milton is not following. So his sonnet, according to the Petrarchan structure, is divided into an octave, the first 8 lines, and a sestet, the next 6 lines. And that makes a total of 14 lines. And if you remember, how many lines does a sonnet have? The sonnet has 14 lines. The rhyme, as I told you, was A, B, B, A, B, B, A in the octave. Now this was different for other poets who used A, B, A, B. So this is an inversion, this is a variation which Milton is doing. And then the other English poets, when they were writing their sonnets into 3 quatrains, they first had A, B, different from this, and they picked up another rhyme over here, C, D, C, D. Now Milton repeats the same pattern in the 2nd quatrain. Similarly, he repeats the same pattern of the first tercet in the sestet. He repeats it in the 2nd tercet. So you have similar pattern in the first 8 lines, you have a similar pattern in the 2nd set, that is the sestet, the next 6 lines. This is one unique experiment that Milton is doing. He's deviated from the other poets, the tradition followed by other poets. There is, you will find a unity of thought in the octave. As we said, that in the first 8 lines Milton is unhappy. The mood, the emotion, the dominant emotion is that of unhappiness. He feels that 23 years have passed and he has not been able to do anything or produced any poetry of merit. Although we know that he did produce, but he felt that way. With yet, the word yet in the beginning of the 9th line, that is beginning of the sestet, there was a turning point. We talked about this. And the mood changes. Faith is restored in God and he is sure that he will be able to do something well, something great in life when he eventually writes good poems. We also saw that there was a variation of rhyme in the sestet. So these were some of the features, the structural features of his sonnet, which makes it distinct and different from other writers. Let us now concentrate on the poetic devices. The first device is that of personification. And what did he personify? By the way, what does personification signify? What does it mean? It means that you treat qualities which are abstract, you treat things which are inanimate as persons, and you talk about them as if they are people, they are human beings. So this poetic device is called personification. Can you recollect what did Milton personify? He personified time as a thief and as a winged creature. So time is portrayed as a winged creature and a thief. And what does he take? Like a thief, he steals away the poet's years quietly. So the first poetic device is that of personification, in which he personifies time as a winged thief. Then there is a metaphor, my hasting days fly. Now what is a metaphor? When you apply something to something else to which it normally does not apply, it is called a metaphor. For example, days do not fly like birds, but here if you treat days as birds and say that they fly, it becomes a metaphor. So his hasting days, what kind of days? Days which are passing away very soon, very hastily, they are flying away like birds. So this is another poetic device which is a metaphor. Then he uses another metaphor, that of from nature, and he says that his age, his life is like spring which has shown no bud or blossom. That means his poetic life, his poetic youth is like spring which has not produced any poetry. So poems and poetry are compared with bud and blossom, and his youth is compared with spring. He carries this image, this metaphor further when he says, like a tree with no buds or flowers. So his age, his youth is like a tree which has no buds or flowers. And this image is again carried forward when he says that he lacks inward ripeness. Ripeness is associated with what? With fruits. So trees bear flowers and fruits, and his fruits are not ripe enough. So you see how a sustained metaphor, an image, a poetic image of spring, of trees, of plants, of nature is carried on in different lines. Now what questions can be asked on this particular poet and the sonnet that is prescribed? Like any other poet or any other poem that is prescribed, you can get explanations of lines and you have to explain them with reference to the context. That means you have to tell where these lines are from. They are from Milton's sonnet, John Milton's sonnet, entitled, How Soon Hath Time, the Subtle Thief of Youth. If you identify these two things, you will fetch good marks. This is very crucial because it shows, if you have identified the piece from where it has been taken and who the author is, it shows you have read the text properly. Along with that, of course, in the second para, you explain the lines, and in the third part, you give critical comments from your side. Suppose you had the first few lines, How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth. You could have said in the third para, you could have commented that Milton has talked about time, he has personified time. Now this would mean that you have understood the text and you also are aware of the stylistic and poetic features. Then you can be asked to write a critical appreciation, or you can be asked to estimate the poem critically. This would mean that you not only put the poem in a context, you also give a paraphrase with the central idea and the stylistic features. Then you can be asked, this is again explanations. Reference to context is a short answer type question. Critical appreciation and central idea or theme are the long answer type questions. And then, of course, these were the regular questions that can be asked, but specifically in the case of Milton, you can be asked to bring out the autobiographical element in his sonnet. In this case, you would be required to briefly refer to the biographical phases, how he was a great scholar and how by the age of 23 he felt frustrated. So all those things you will need to refer to. You can be asked to assess the poem as a sonnet. Now in this case, this is something like a critical appreciation. Now but here you will have to talk about how his sonnet follows certain traditions and how it deviates from certain traditions. You will need to talk about the structure and the style of the sonnet and how it follows the Petrarchan model in certain respect and what is original about his style. This would also mean that you're talking about the literary techniques, that of following the classical model and that of making certain innovations in it. You can also talk about metaphors and poetic devices which he has used in great detail. So let us now revise what we have done so far. We have talked about the sonnet How Soon Hath Time. We talked about its background and we introduced the sonnet, its theme, and we also talked about the text and its meaning. So, structure and rhyme were very important for the sonnet. The poetic devices which he used, that of personification and metaphors, although the metaphors were not very new, they are frequently used by poets. Poets frequently compare youth with spring. So these were some of the features that we had talked about, and how to write examination questions, what we are going to mention. Friends, you would recall the earlier lectures on sonnets and Shakespearean sonnets. Always try to compare, to study literature in perspective and see if you can compare, find a pattern or find a deviation, so you can talk about these and think about these sonnets together, the sonnets of Shakespeare and Milton, which are prescribed for you in the second unit, and also the sonnet of Donne, and try to analyze and think critically how they vary and what are the similarities. I'm sure you must have found this talk useful. Wish you luck in your examination.
You were just listening an audio program, John Milton, How Soon Hath Time. Subject, expert and speaker was Dr. Shubra Thripathi. Announcer was Prem Sharan Khemaria. This audio program was edited and presented by Amar Bahadur Yadav. This program was produced by the Electronic Media Production and Research Center, EMPRC of Madhya Pradesh Bhoj Open University in association with NITTTR Bhopal.